Okay, so hello everyone and welcome. Welcome to the next lecture in the title of the digital humanities language service, as combined with the focus DiaMaNT service, as combined with this for organizing this series of lectures. And today we're having here Katrien Depuydt from the Institute of the Dutch Language in Leiden, Institute for the Nederlandse Taal from Leiden, and she will be talking about DiaMaNT. It's probably an acronym of something. We'll hear more, I guess, in a minute or so. DiaMaNT, the diachronic semantic lexicon of Dutch. So welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for your kind invitation. DiaMaNT is an acronym. The DI stands for diachronic, diachron, and A is for the semantic, and NT is Dutch language in Nederlandse taal. So a girl has to do something, so that is DiaMaNT. Basically, what I will be telling you about is the general idea that modern historical lexicography has to go beyond ordinary dictionary lookup, and that traditional lexicographers have produced a wealth of language material which can be put to use in a 21st century way. So that's the general idea of this talk and of the program we've been working on with my colleagues since, I think, 2006 when we started. So there's a lot to tell. I will try to be as clear as possible. If there's any questions, feel free to ask. But let's take you back to where it's why we do this, historical lexicography. This is a very nice letter, and it's one of the sailing letters. And this sailing letters has received a transcription, and that transcription is over here. So it says it's a sailing letter by Steven Jorissen, who lived in Vlissingen, is somewhere in the Netherlands, who wrote a letter to his wife. He was in Bordeaux in France in 1666, and he writes a letter to ask her, "How are you doing, darling? I'm fine, hoping you're good health. I'm packing things, we'll be coming back home soon." It's a beautiful letter collection. Suppose you're my sister, my mother, or anyone interested in this text, you will find a word like groetenis, and you can say, what does that mean here? I want to understand what he's talking about. So you will have to know the meaning of a word. So the most simple thing we all do, we grab a book or we look online and we try to find groetenis, and we know the meaning of the word, and there's still a little bit of the text we understand. Thank God for the historical dictionaries. But suppose I was more inquisitive and more of a researcher, and I thought, well, how often does these letters contain the word groetenis? How do I find them back, and how do I find everything back in this collection? So then you will see that, for instance, for groetenis, in this letter collection, it's 1,000 letters we have put online. It's an English interface, so I'll have the address in my PowerPoint, you can see it later on. You'll see there's a great deal of historical spelling variation. If my mother doesn't know historical spelling variation, or anyone else, they won't find these instances in the letters. So, and to go a step further, he had used the word groetenis, but it refers to a concept which can be expressed by other words than simply groetenis, which might have been used in this collection. And you see, present-day Dutch groet, the second one, is used. Groetenis is used most frequently, but also more rarely gebiedenis or salute. And these are all words for the same concept, groetenis, which I would like to research. How can we help this researcher to discover that in this collection, these are the 4 words used for the concept greetings? That's what it's all about. And if you have a very particular researcher, and this is inspired by many contacts with humanities researchers, then if you search for a text collection, ideally you sometimes would like to find a particular word or concept in a particular meaning in a text. So I have here two quotations in the corpus of the word free, vrij. In the one thing, in the first context, he's free because he's off duty. He doesn't have to work. In the second citation, I'm taking the liberty to tell you, or whatever, a totally different meaning. So suppose you're researching the concept free. Then you would like to have some more guidance towards the specific meaning of that word. Okay. What we call that, and I didn't even invent this myself, historical language barrier. It was in an FP7 project with digital libraries who said, we have one issue with historical language, that's the historical language barrier. I was thinking, okay, yes, people don't know the spelling, the formal variation, orthographic, phonological, morphosyntactic. So when they search a document, what can they do? But there is also the semantic variation we discussed. There's different expressions of the same concept, and there's different senses of the same word. Well, that's our job. How do we resolve these challenges? I just mentioned a couple of them just to make it clear. Now, the first one we resolved at the beginning. Groetenissen, we go for dictionary lookup. So what we did at our organization was, okay, we have historical word dictionaries, 4 to describe the entire historical language of Dutch. 2 were born digital, 2 were print dictionaries that were digitized. We decided to cover historical Dutch language, to give the user more knowledge of that historical language, to allow users to query these dictionaries without knowing in which dictionary they want to be, etc., etc. We will put these dictionaries online, and then we have resolved the first problem. If this person wants to find groetenis, he can come online and search our dictionaries. So to give you an idea, we have 4 dictionaries covering the historical language. So the Old Dutch period from 600 till 1200. Then from 1200 till 1300 was the Dictionary of Early Middle Dutch, the Middle Dutch Dictionary, and the Dictionary of the Dutch Language. They were compiled in different periods. That means that the first 2 were born digital and were made last, and the last 2 were paper dictionaries and were afterwards either digitized or put in, on CD-ROM, or we converted digital files from the printers to get it in a CD-ROM version of the dictionary. Some statistics, there's a wealth of information in these dictionaries. If you look at the number of quotations in the WNT, for instance, that is 1.6 million quotations. So all dictionaries in total have 2 million quotations. A lot of different meanings, a lot of detailed information on historical meaning, and an incredible amount of entries, which is, on the one hand, the main challenge, because it's a lot of material. On the other hand, still, for some techniques, you would wish for a larger corpus, but I come back to that later. This is how we put the historical dictionary online. I gave a presentation yesterday on that. Basically, the idea is the simplest form of integration was to add a modern Dutch equivalent to each entry of the dictionary, so you can do combined searching. What did we use for that, which is important for all the next steps I will be talking about? We used XML-TEI, and we decided on passing the dictionary structure to to isolate these information categories, which we deemed were most interesting, not only for the online dictionaries, but also for future work with the dictionary material. So we put efforts on encoding senses and quotations. You can see it here. You have the senses are tagged, the quotations are tagged, and the metadata going with the quotations is tagged and is dated. So because that is your core material, the quotation material, which is dated, which gives evidence of the language in that certain period. The definitions, like Kilgareth would say, Adam Kilgareth in his paper, There Are No Word Senses, would say, is an interpretation of the set of quotations. But the quotations, is always the main resource of every product and every dictionary for us online, because it gives the evidence. So this is a nice visualization of our TEI structure, and we have entries going down to quotations, and for some dictionaries even place information, because the historical dictionaries until the Middle Dutch dictionary have information on localization, on not the WNT, but all the three other dictionaries have. So this was parsed as well. What we did, you can parse a dictionary, but sometimes it's necessary to add information also to make it more searchable. So what I already discussed, every historical entry has a modern Dutch equivalent. Part of speech has been parsed out of the dictionary contents and has been added as a separate information category to the entry, so as to be and was mapped so as to be the same for all the 4 dictionaries. We completed the abbreviated form variants and related entries, because for a user, paper dictionaries have the way of abbreviating and saying apple, pie, and then this is a stripe and then pie. We completed these forms because for us, for a user, he shouldn't be questioning whether an entry should be in dictionary A, B, C or D, but he should also not question whether an entry should be at a level of main entry or at a level of related entry. That would be stupid. So these have all a tagging headword, whether they are related entry or not. So we put a lot of effort into the metadata of the quotations and correct parsing, which was a challenge, because that's the material we continue working with. And another advantage what we did is we have this main view with main part of speech and lemma, but we also linked every dictionary entry to the other and disambiguated homonyms. So, this entry in this dictionary is this or that entry in the other dictionary and vice versa. So you have an overview via modern Dutch equivalent, but you can also go from one dictionary to the other. That was already essential information for what we did with it later. And we are a strong believer in manual verification of semi-automatic processing as much as possible. And especially in this context also, we manually verified all the automatic linking we did in the first place. We did, of course, data analysis for this work on structure and on the contents. And you have to look very carefully at the historical dictionary, because if you have a dictionary entry, it can, because it's a paper dictionary, contain more information on other entries hidden within the same entry. So we have dancer and danseres. Dancer is a female dancer, danseres is a female dancer, and you could easily get an entry in the dictionary saying, okay, dancer meaning female version danseres and some quotation of danseres. Keep that in mind. If you want to work further on the next step, you have to know that there is a mixture of information which even doesn't have the entry danseres as a sub-entry with entry, which can give not such a clear, strict view on each entry describes one word in the dictionary. When these dictionaries were online, historical dictionaries, and well past, the next thing we thought was, being that we wanted to allow people to search for historical spelling variants without even knowing which variants there exist, we thought we might have a solution of resolving this by building a computational lexicon. This is an example of two types of crazy variation you find in historical Dutch. The first one is uiterlijk, which you can say with some rules you could predict the variation, but that's quite a lot. The second lemma, world, is cannot be predicted anymore, not by any rule-based whatever reason. So this is our motivation, that building a computational lexicon of historical Dutch makes sense. Some things you can resolve with rules, but for some things you need lexicon information, and in the best cases you do a combination of both, which we do when working with the lexicon. So the first thing we did was build on top of these past historical dictionaries this computational lexicon called GIGANT. That is our central database, in which we have each entry with all the potential word form spellings belonging to that entry, which can be used for corpus annotation to parts per speech tag and lemmatized corpora, or for query expansion. Give you an example of that. That was the first one. Why did we use dictionaries in the first place? Because really, if you have no computational lexicon of historical Dutch whatsoever, or historical language whatsoever, and you have good dictionaries with dated quotations material, you will know that in every quotation of your dictionary there's an occurrence of your entry. So when you do rule-based extraction or extraction or automatic extraction of a potential occurrence of that word lemma in your quotations, it is easier to do. So we built an attestation tool, which means that here is the lemma allocate, here are quotations from the dictionary, and here these quotations were for our team were automatically passed out of the dictionary entries, and then an entire bunch of people just manually corrected these quotations, which was a really quick thing to do. They saw the overview in color, ordered by certainty. The most certain ones, the uncertain ones were pink. The most certain ones were green. We had this tricky thing, 3,910 lemma at all, 10 to be revised yet. It was online, 4 people or 5 people or 6 people or 10 people at the same time could work on this. And there's some kind of competition going on. Oh, still 10 to do, oh, still 12 to do. You saw it on screen, you pressed the space bar when it was okay, you went to the next entry, so some entries went quickly, or you clicked another attestation. If it was wrong, you just did a mouse click and you could highlight the other attestation. That's how we quickly built our first word form lexicon based on our historical dictionaries. We did a modular approach. We first took the WNT. We then took the Middle Dutch Dictionary, and via this linking they are already integrated. You remember I said we manually linked one entry to another. They were integrated, and this is the lexical database in which you have the Middle Dutch ezel, donkey, and the WNT, and here are all the quotations highlighted back in the database. And we will next year we will adding the module based on the 13th century dictionary and the Old Dutch dictionary. So, but these two are already there with all their word forms connected and linked and online. and with all this information on attestation and dates, and with all the links to the online dictionaries. Even though at a given point danseres in our computational lexicon has become a separate entry with the quotations danseres, because we retrieve the information on the persistent identifier of the quotation. In the dictionary, we can link back to the historical dictionary. So every information category in our dictionaries has a persistent identifier, which we use then for in the lexicon, so that we just literally keep building on top of one product on top of the other. So just to retain the link. The nice thing about this computational lexicon, that it is already operational with the Royal Library of the Netherlands. This is their user interface of Delver, which has millions and millions of digital newspaper material and books, whatever. Their entire collection is there. And we have the lexicon, computational lexicon, in a lexicon service, which means that whenever a user does a query, the lexicon server will suggest potential spelling variants, which we already have in the lexicon, so that he retrieves more information than only the spelling of the word he knows, or the two spellings of the word he knows. This implementation is the only research result which can be ever put online. So, but people are using it a lot, because it at least gives them more answers to what they've searched for than it used to be. Sometimes with wereld, for instance, or regering, government, I think going from 3,000 results with spelling variants, they get like 26,000, 27,000, which is, of course, gives a better picture of what is in the material. Okay, then we're dealing, and we're still working on dealing with historical spelling variation. But this doesn't resolve the fact that on the next level, you would like to suggest users not only spelling variation, but also, if you are looking for groetenis, you might want to look at groet or gebiedenis or salut, because it's all vocabulary with the same meaning. Okay, what can we do about that issue without being too and trying to be not overly ambitious at the same time? So, or is it possible to have some strategies available to help a user searching for big corpora to get a specific meaning of the word free? Would that be possible? So that is the last part in the infrastructure, and that is the DiaMaNT project, which has really the top layer and has all the other layers below in it. So there's this onomasiological, there's still Dutch there, and semasiological variation, how to know which words a concept was expressed in historical language, and are there strategies to find a word in a particular meaning in a text corpus. This is in italic, because I'm not sure whether we will resolve that, but we will at least give a try and see what the latest state of the art is in language technology there. The first thing I thought was, and I'm a very pragmatic person, and I have been a lexicographer on 2 of the 4 dictionaries which are mentioned there, and I thought, okay, the first pragmatic thing to do is, let's try and see whether these lexicographers have given synonyms in their definition. Would we be able to retrieve these synonyms? Because then we already have a suggestion of this word has these potential synonyms. So we did that based on rule-based extraction. And we did it for the 2 dictionaries that are in the computational lexicon GIGANT already, MNW and WNT. And we start with MNW because the Middle Dutch dictionary is basically resembles a lot a translation dictionary, because Verdam had a medieval historical entry, and he put in his spelling a modern equivalent instead of every time an analytical definition. And the advantage is that Verdam was virtually the only person working on the Middle Dutch dictionary, the nine parts of this dictionary. He did basically all on his own. So for internal consistency, this dictionary was a good way to start. How does this look like? You can see it here. Here is the definition. This is already an extraction suggestion from what we have done via rules, and we have a colleague now still manually checking what is in there. So you can see with donkey, it'll be ezel, which is of course the same word in modern Dutch, and domoor means stupid person, which is the second meaning of donkey in Dutch. So for donkey, you have at least two synonyms here as an example. I discussed already earlier yesterday that it's sometimes nice to already present intermediate results to a user when doing so. If we did automatic synonym extraction, and we have it in our database, and even with this automatic synonym extraction, there's some really great things you already can do with that. Here I have been looking for the word stupid, dom. And just keyed in the synonym dom. I'm looking for stupid people in historical text, dom. And look what my simple synonym extraction comes up with. Bad, ignorant, stupid, boors, bot, dommelijk, mindless, green, rude, insignificant, whatever. All these synonyms, which I could just now suggest to my user, saying, oh, look, if you're looking for stupid people in your corpus, you could do this. And this is just an example. This is a 13th century corpus, and I just used all the synonyms suggested to me. And then I see that in this corpus you have things like zot, dul, onvroed, dorper, all kinds of synonyms for stupid person. The nice thing is that you can also get the diachronic overview. This is the stupid person, and this is a very basic visualization. We haven't focused on visualizing on visualization strategies yet, but I have been using here the information on dates in my quotations. And so by simply using that, you can see that care for stupid person just is 13th century, and later on it wasn't found anymore. And maybe it depends. Of course, it depends on your material, and maybe there'll be a care, but not in this time period. Bietekwiet is very rarely used. Zotska is used Zotska for a longer period. So this is the value of your information in your quotations. You could get this diachronic overview of your synonyms. So how well did that go? Just some numbers. We had 147,000 candidates, and we did a sample evaluation on precision and recall, which is pretty good, I think. I must say, I analyzed rules, it was tried out, we manually checked and made the rules better. And rules resemble a lot like the rules you would do when you parse the dictionary structure. You look for what is the typographical marker of a synonym, or is there a special interpunction used? Which italic word I don't want to use. When it's preceded by a language name, this will not be a synonym. In that sense, we have been working on these rules. And the nice thing was that if you already have a list, that's the third example, of of, because we've been working with sample data sets in the beginning, of historical words which in the spelling of de Vries de Winkel, and you'll try to find it back, then your synonym extraction is even better, because then the precision increases to 95%. So that is not bad at all. But what we're currently doing is manual verification of this synonym extraction. We will then do the manual verification of the synonym extraction of the WNT as well. I have to say that this manual verification of the MNW, which is going on right now, is done by one colleague, and she has not a lot of time to do it. Say that she will be working for 1 day a week for a year to be able to correct these 147,000 things. But we have a nice environment for which checking is easy. So that is not too time consuming to do so. What we would want to do as a next step is resolve synonym detection at entry level. So going from sense to entry, meaning that I have now a synonym in the sense of the MNW, and I will now try to automatically detect to which entry it belongs. That will be the second step. We have tooling to do that, because this is a job, a data job we have been doing for linking, for checking the automatic linking of, for instance, these dictionary entries. So, and then we will follow, of course, the links between MNW and WNT, which were used in GIGANT. And so we will have already some synonym sets and clustering going on there. The most difficult part will be to resolve synonym detection at sense level, going from sense to sense, and linking words at sense levels where there are no synonyms for in the definition. That is the most difficult part, because not every definition has a synonym in it, and still you want to do some work there. And this is where we're thinking of using distributional semantics as a strategy to see how well that is already working, not to invent new methodologies, but selecting good quality, robust existing solutions that might help resolve some of these issues. So we have a nice collection of ground truth quality material, the Digital Library of Dutch Language and Literature, which we already have been using vector information from, and then we'll apply different strategies. For linking meaning, we'll go to Lex and Doc2Vec, and via corpus distribution, trying to link works with the same meaning. So these are ideas. Why do we have these ideas? Because by looking at our data, when you're doing these kind of technologies or word sense disambiguation, people work with an inventory of senses. Well, we have an inventory of senses. It is in our dictionary. People use a semantically tagged corpus to work with. We have a quotation corpus with almost 2 million words which are semantically tagged. So there is already information there. And a background corpus, like a large historical corpus to obtain word embeddings, we already have available as well. So as for the data, the situation is not bad at all. But the tools we would like to have, so this is me dreaming, is detecting tools that detect semantic change, tools for word sense induction and for word sense disambiguation. Word sense induction, because we want to compare what comes out of a corpus in what is in our dictionary. For word sense disambiguation, of course, because I want to be able to help Professor Weefjes, who said, you can only help me if I can find words in a particular meaning in a corpus. I said, okay, then we have to have something like word sense disambiguation. He's a political historian, so that was his requirement. Other people in digital humanities want detect semantic change, or want to be aware of semantic change. So The dictionary and the lexicon gives information on semantic change. The dictionary can help with strategies to define semantic change. So that is the reason why for DiaMaNT we are looking into these things. We have been trying out a couple of things because I'm a very sceptic person. I'm thinking, well, does this work? Let's try out a couple of things just to do so. This is, we have computed the distance between the quotations, and we know the quotations belong to a certain sense, and have been, hence the coloring, and we're trying to see whether there's some kind of clustering of the meaning zin. The meaning zin meaning can mean mind, it can mean sentence, it can mean longing, it can have all kinds of meanings. And if you look a little bit at the coloring, you see that there's some sense of clustering, even when you try to group the quotations, also via distributional semantics, for of the meaning sense. There's a 3D way we can turn it around. If you see here, you see a cluster like this, and this is some kind of grouping, and here is some kind of clustering going on. So this gave us this just one example of, well, it might make sense to try something like that. What we also tried out is two test cases using the scholarly dictionary quotations as a historical semantic corpus, is to try and see what we could do homograph disambiguation. So take the WNT with nominal homographs with at least 50 quotations. You do leave one out and see whether you can put this quotation within the right dictionary entry. If that is possible, you just have the quotation, you have your dictionary entry. Does it belong in the right dictionary entry? And the other thing we try to do is, if we were able with this to distinguish main senses within a lemma, that is the second one. And for the homographs, we did three strategies, which I won't go into in detail, for which the third strategy worked rather well, the doc-to-vec similarity, which gave us the hope that for using doc-to-vec similarity for trying to relate two dictionary senses to one another, that this might be a strategy that could be useful based on these results. And because we use this for quotations and similarity in quotations, and you put the quotation within the right entry. But what if we have similar definitions and we can link the definitions with doc-to-vec similarity? And the other one is to trying to define the core senses, and this is still quite a challenge. My computational linguist, I'm not a technical person, said, this is not going well, because if you do the baseline and do the most frequent sense, we have 67%, and if you use distributional semantics, then you get 76%. It's the same result. I said, yes, but in the second result, you give me different senses, and in the first result, I get only this most frequent one. So there's still, I try and still keep hopeful there, but still a lot of work to do. Okay, this is about some of the lexicon building application. Having had TI as a means of encoding the dictionary and putting it online in the historical dictionaries, for the Computational Lexicon GIGANT, we have it in all kinds of formats, but we can use it in a lexicon service with API. For the lexicon, for the semantic level, the DiaMaNT level, on top of this information, we decided to go for linked open data. And it was motivated by the fact that the lexicon functions will be playing a part in the Clariah infrastructure, in which they want to have some semantic resources, basic semantic resources in this infrastructure on person entity graphs, location entity graphs, and concept entity graphs. So, and the general format within Clariah is linked data. So that's a motivation. Why would you use this lexical data in Clariah for? And how would it function, the lexicon in Clariah, as local search? But then you should have an endpoint, like they call it in linked data, where you provide the information. For federated search, we would like to have joint querying of different lexical data. And chaining search, we would like to be able to give the user the opportunity to say, well, here is lexical information, you use this to query the corpus, or you add two lexical databases, the information together, and you query a corpus, and vice versa. So federated search means you search in several resources in different places at the same time. So this is an example, just a federated search in which we search within several corpora. The Spraakbanken corpora, or the IT modern corpus, or the historical corpus, or the Nederlab corpus at Nederlands Institute. That would be federated search. Okay. When deciding to go for linked open data, you have the entire discussion again, like you have for your conversion of your dictionary and using a standard like TEI. What will you be converting and doing, and why? So we use the scheme we base it on is Lemon Ontolex. But there's a difference. Will I try and put my dictionary content as it is in RDF, or will I do an RDF by computational lexicon view on the dictionary? We would like to have some information on the provenance and the status of the data, because I used to be very hesitant not to deliver a product that wasn't finished yet, but ever since working on these computational lexica, I have noticed that people are really happy already to use intermediate results. And since some of my information is manually annotated and some isn't, I want to give that information to the user of the lexical data. So they can say, okay, this is manually corrected, this is automatically annotated, and which this kind of quality measuring on the automatically annotated data. So usage information and attestation is something that was not in Lemon Ontolex, and lexical relations is also important. Why linked open data? Well, I repeat it because it is a standard for Clariah. It allows for a good interoperability. It's a simple model. But never do it for content management. See it as a format. Because I have been researching all kinds of tools with linked data and trying to link and do data processing with it. I would go crazy. It would take too much time. I haven't found the right solution yet. We don't produce linked open data. We do RDF, linked open data, but not for the data production, just for as a form of distribution of the material. What I said, dictionary versus lexicon, we don't try to emulate the historical dictionary. We want to emulate the information needed in the computational lexicon and keep track of the provenance. So this is basically our linked data document, and you will see that I will quickly show you that there's this is the lexical entry, there's a lexical sense, there's a sense definition, and within Ontolex we created an object synonym definition because we want to add some qualities to this, add some additional information to that. Another thing which was not in Ontolex was this attestation information. I'll be brief on that. I've been stressing this along this presentation. You need to have that all that information present. So if anyone has a better name, I would be very appreciative. Because attestation is the core element, from which we derive information on formal variation and on meaning, because it's linked to meaning. We had to have something like we added some kind of lexical phenomenon, which we had to create to be able to say, well, this is the attestation, there's quotation information there, and there's lexical sense related to this attestation, there's the lexical entry is related to all these attestations, and all the kinds of forms are also related to the attestations. That was something we had to add. We called it lexical phenomenon, verschijnsel, but I don't know what we would do, but it was something we had to add to the Lemon model. We took also care to have extreme good information on the metadata of the quotation, for which we designed the model there. Too much detail, but you will see there's the text there, there's the double core information on author and everything else with graphical reference. Author, title, witness year from, witness year to. If you want to know about witness, there's a date of a text and date of a witness. A witness is the date of the manuscript in which a word was found. So, and provenance, like I told you, and that's why usually in ontologs you can say there's a string for a synonym, and that is there. We have provenance information also in there. So a user can already say, give me all the synonyms which are manually verified. I don't care, automatic or manually verified. I want to use everything there. You can do it. And in Clariah, in the context of Clariah, they were very pleased with that. People like provenance information. Why would we do all this? The nice thing about Clariah is also that we have different mini projects in which we can really try out our intermediate results. So this helped us a lot. But the simple use cases are diachrony of similar terms, which I already showed you. Combining semantic lexica. If you have your lexicon in linked data and there is a WordNet in linked data, then you can combine the information from both of them without even linking them, but just to combine querying. Using distributional information, join with external ontology data, and deploying corpus search. This you've already seen. This is the most simple one. You can analyze and see and get out information on a chronology of related terms. This is when I try to combine Open Dutch WordNet with weapon, with all the information on weapons within my lexicon. I would never be able to do that manually, and to have all these relations propagated from WordNet to my lexicon. Visualization is poor, I know, but it means you can get all these information on weapons and related terms out of your historical dictionary with using WordNet, combining it with WordNet, because it is already in RDF. This is also a nice one. You look for relations between dictionary data using distributional information from a diachronic corpus. So that is what we did. Instead of using the definitions and the synonyms, you take your dictionary, you use distributional semantic information from your corpus, and you see whether you can find related words using this information. And this is going really well. You have here a villain, and these are things like a villain, a tyrant, misdadiger, verrader, oplichters, scam artist, ellendeling. This is all related words and all almost near synonyms using that corpus information. So this is really a path I really want to take also to see whether I can get more relations out of it instead of only using synonym relation. The nice thing, which I thought personally was also very nice, if you do a DiaMaNT project like I do, There's a lot to do already without having to add an ontology layer on top of it as well. I will do a simple ontology on top of the information. I will have to, because I want to be able to for people to look for fish and for animals, whatever. But how, I'm not sure yet. I have experimented with the ontology of DBpedia and have linked these together. And the nice thing was that you find all kinds of fish here. These are my fish out of my 2 dictionaries there. And it was really nice. There's the maanfish, the varkenfish, and these are all fishes. And relating to senses, these dots are, this is an entry, these are senses in the entry. And then I came to this one, this little one, which is, I don't know what, kabeljauw is a kind of white fish. I don't know what the English word is. Never mind. And then I found a word in there which is onvis. On meaning not, vis, fish. And I thought, well, what is wrong with my dictionary that in the cluster with kabeljauw I find onvis. This is by using DBpedia, I would never have discovered it at all. I went to look into the dictionary and I discovered that in Scheveningen and in Katwijk, fishermen who were fishing sometimes were fishing for a particular fish and in their nets had fish they didn't want. And why was kabeljauw an onvis, a fish they didn't want? Not because it was cheap, but it was because it was so expensive. It was difficult to sell. So onvis was just a nice term for like onkruid, which you know, that is all this green stuff in your garden you don't want. Weeds, all these weeds you don't want. This onkruid in Dutch, onvis. So yeah, these things, I'm just a simple girl, make me enthusiastic. I'm thinking, okay, having my lexicon and linked data in the state it is now, combining it and doing combined querying gets me nice results out of as a lexicographer, which I can use and which I would never had if I hadn't done that. And as I said, there's always the simple searching for in a corpus, which also makes sense if you have that information. And I think that I leave it to that.
Thank you very, very much. That was really, really a tightly packed thing. Thanks for that. I'm sure there will be many, many questions. We have no many hours to address all of them, but maybe a couple. So yeah, we'll start.
I'm sorry, I've been overwhelming you.
We all feel slightly overwhelmed, but I have actually one question, at least one, referring to this GIGANT lexicon. How and if, how did you deal with the inflection, the nominal inflection, the verbal inflection, when listing those spelling variants?
Okay, we have designed a full morphological scheme which is diachronic by nature, which would allow us to tag tag every word form with this proper grammatical information. I must say we haven't done that yet, because it is something we would like to do, which would take for 1.5 or 2 million word forms would take a lot of time and effort. What we are thinking of, which is the following: we have in the same database structure a modern lexicon module developed from scratch, which is currently being clicked into the historical lexicon model of GIGANT. So we have internally a HELEX, historical lexicon module, which will have the 4 dictionaries, and we have MOLEX. And MOLEX was the computational lexicon, the modern lexicon, which is used for modern corpora, which is also used for modern spelling, for the online spelling guide of Dutch. And this module has for almost 200,000 entries now, with a full paradigm, with every inflection of the words in there. And so the strategy we are thinking of now is trying to come up with an automatic mapping, word form mapping between the entries will be linked, so we will know that these word forms have a modern equivalent in the paradigm, in the modern paradigm, and with computational, with mapping strategies by computational linguists, we will try and do a first automatic mapping, which we will have verified, so that at least gradually more and more of these word forms will be annotated properly.
Do you already have the historical paradigms?
The difficult thing is that the historical paradigm for Dutch is extremely variable. There's no way of predicting what the historical paradigm would be of a certain entry, because only because of the crazy spelling variation. You would really have to normalize, and then you will find things that are not there. It is spelling, historical spelling has changed and changed and changed. Spelling changed until 1994 in Dutch. But anyway, historical spelling changed constantly. There was one fixed spelling at the beginning. Really the first really accepted official spelling guide for Dutch was the one designed for the Dictionary of the Dutch Language by De Vries and de Winkel. They said, we make a dictionary, we have to spell our entries, we have to have an official spelling list, otherwise it will not be possible. And they were the first ones to do it. So the first, what is later called in Dutch the groene boekje, because eventually in 1954 it was printed in green and people had their green book on their desk because it's a governmental project. The government decides on the spelling eventually and says, you know, this is the correct official spelling. So all the period before that, there's no system. Well, no, there's a system, but anyways, there's a lot of variation. So our idea is eventually, because that is why we also built that computational lexicon, that is the institutional point of view, is that eventually we will have, based on attestation, corpus information, we will gradually be able to build up the paradigm from that, and build on the information we'll find. And that is really one of the plans for the future, when we try and combine our when we have every information, all the information in our central database, and we look and we can analyze, among other things, what language period is represented or type of collection. Then we can add corpus material, and then we will be completing the paradigm. But if I would have, it would take a lot of time. We're still not there yet. But we have designed the scheme to do it. We are now coming up with strategies which would make it easier, but it's not done yet now, unfortunately, because I wouldn't find them. I don't think I would succeed in finding the money if I would say, let's do work on that. It's 600,000 entries. It can't be predicted. So I have to be creative in that sense. So, and that is one of the general ideas. And we believe it can work because we have, for instance, combined with the lexicon, historical spelling variation set for the period of the Dictionary of the Dutch Language, the DiaMaNT, which was done by automatically aligning 10,000 historical word forms with and trying to come up with a modern equivalent and automatically derive spelling variations from. And we know this attempt for automatic conversion works reasonably well. So that hence our hope that, or our belief that, this would be a quicker way to do so. Yeah.
Questions? Sorry.
You want first?
Right, I go for it.
Okay, so I've got the question about the status of quotations.
Yeah.
Did you lemmatise each word in?
No, we did. We haven't yet. It's something we would like to do, but automatic part-of-speech tagging and lemmatization of historical Dutch language is still an unresolved issue.
Okay.
So we would like to be a little bit further within the technology to be able to do that. But of course we would like to do that because it will give us way more information than what we already have also in the lexicon, because not every word in a quotation is also an entry in the dictionary. We already know that, for sure. But in another project, in the Nederland project, we are currently really analyzing very well the state of the art of automatic annotation with part of speech and lemma of historical Dutch. So, and by working in that other project on that aspect, hopefully we'll come to a time where this will be done better. But it's a good question because it's also on our list. We have a very long list. But we are 28 people in total at our organization, and not 4 times as much like I would like to have as history. And not all historical language, so.
So do you track the users of the infrastructure? I mean, who actually looks into the lexicon? Are these main scholars or, so to say, average fans of Dutch language?
Okay.
And if I may, a second, slightly silly question about normalization of the orthography. Is it consulted with the Belgian government or not at all?
Yeah. We are a binational language institution. We are funded by the Flemish government and the Dutch government. There's a committee of ministers, and they approve and everything, and they are responsible for their funding. They're responsible for our funding. So yeah, I had to produce a governmental list for the word list in 2005 there was a major update, and now we do annual updates. We don't have to have a committee of ministers giving us their blessing anymore. They know now we structurally update every 3 months the official spelling guide and whatever, and it's online and every because we want to keep up with modern language and language development.
Every 3 months.
We adding new material. Yeah, not an update of spelling rules. We are not allowed to touch any of these spelling rules anymore, because spelling is the most emotional matter in language ever. I was project manager, project lead of the last edition of the 2005 dictionary. I've been involved in committees in Suriname, the Antilles, and the Netherlands. And whatever, and with experts discussing matters, and they all get emotional, one way or the other. It's true. But to come up to your first question, yes, we monitor. For the Computational Lexicon, which is functioning in the lexicon service, KB is monitoring that. It is used systematically by users. They automatically get suggestions, so whenever they use it, it's default on in their infrastructure. So whenever anyone uses the infrastructure of KB, and that's a lot of users, they get suggestions from the lexicon service. So they're happy people. We have the lexicon also in the Nederland project also, where it is used for query expansion. The idea of the lexicon service came really basically from the fact, and for the Computational lexicon came basically from a Clariah lecture I saw in the Netherlands, in which a historian was busy with newspapers, and she was saying that it was and a query engine, and she was saying that she put so much effort into query expansion, adding all kinds of potential words she would like to use to study a certain concept. And I was sitting there and I'm thinking, oh girl, and you don't even know that there are so many variants there. Couldn't I support research in at least a little bit and give some suggestions so as to get more information? There should be a better way. So that was one of these ideas. So because I thought KB and other libraries, they don't part of speech tag and lematize their material. It's not part of their workflow, it doesn't fit, they will never do it. So they need other tools for the general public to be able to do so. So, and for researchers, we have several researchers have been asking for the lexicon, using lexicon service. We part of speech tag and lematize with the lexicon and the spelling variation rules also. We have that online for historical Dutch. We do our own experiments with it. So in that sense, the lexicon is really asked a lot to work with. The historical dictionaries are widely used, more than we had ever expected. When we came online, the people needed to subscribe. And I think when the first module came online, we were overwhelmed. It was greatly announced because our director left the institution. It was his going away gift, this online dictionary. And people were registering and we thought systems would fail. It's crazy how every second it was ding, 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 a new registration. And we have consistent use of the dictionaries. A lot of people emailing us saying how pleased they are with the dictionary. And we monitor it, of course, with Google Analytics also. And it's not, we have a small language community, but 70,000 users per month or 80,000, whatever. This is really common and not an exception. I don't have the latest numbers, but it is really used well. And also by very people you wouldn't expect, people like, oh, there's a free online dictionary online. So we had a father emailing, he was looking up something in the dictionary for his 8-year-old son for school, and he said, but this is spelled wrong, we know it. The modern equivalent, so we had to explain. We have a service desk, we explain, oh yeah, this is that and the other. But genealogists, people, and a lot more people just having all this digital language material available, just want to know what is written there and don't understand the meaning and look it up. Yeah. So it's one of our major, one of our most used products, online historical dictionaries. Yeah. Other questions?
Okay. Seems there are so many other things to just digest.
Yeah.
And yeah, so thank you again, and thanks for coming. We'll have the next lunch.
The next one will be on December 1st. Yes. Yeah. And it will be Rafał Rosół.
We will speak about
Tak, 1 grudnia zapraszamy na samochodu z lekcją. Będzie profesor Rafał Rosół i tak jak Ania powiedziała, będzie mówił o
XVII-wiecznych łacińskich inskrypcjach.
Dokładnie. Także serdecznie zapraszamy.
Yeah, yes, it's okay.